Hey Daniel, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I think we both are live, so let's actually get back to the episode itself. So people who are watching us, welcome to the LinkedIn Live itself. We are going to be talking about OWASP AIBOM project itself, and also talking to Manifest Cyber, who are like one of our initial sponsors itself. So let's actually go make some introduction itself. My name is Aruneesh. I'm the project lead for OWASP AIBOM project itself. It started back in October or November of 2025. And what actually prompted me to do this one was my years of experience building SBOMs and looking at the SBOM initiative from CISA itself, going back to 2021, 2022. There are a lot of things that can apply or can be reused within the AI space, right? So I proposed a project to was I think it was September of last year itself. It got approved, and the intent for the project is more of how do you operationalize AI bomb uh, in different organizations. It's okay to actually talk about looking at AI bomb getting created and all these tools itself, right? But how do you actually bring it to the next level? But I think the fundamental thing still applies is like how do we educate masses? How do we create awareness for what are their options in terms of what format they're going to be used, what tools are the best fit, right? Uh, so fast forward, like I think it was January or February, we started the program for bringing in sponsoring companies itself who are actually building AI bomb itself. And so we have Daniel on the LinkedIn Live itself. Daniel, if you want to give a little background about yourself and also talk about Manifest Cyber.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Aruneesh. My name is Daniel Bardenstein, CEO and co-founder of Manifest Cyber. Like you mentioned, Aruneesh, we started 4 years ago with all things very focused on software bills of materials and other types of bills of materials, have since evolved into a more mature and robust platform that helps with all things software supply chain security. So we help enterprises build and buy trusted AI and software. But specifically on AIBOM, this is an area of research for me personally for over 2 years now, right? So as the company was getting started, and we were working with Fortune 500 customers and government agencies on all things software supply chain, integrating into their DevSecOps and CI/CD pipelines, integrating into their third-party risk management processes. The idea came of, well, if AI is a subset of software, and obviously this is before ChatGPT and LLMs, but in those early days, like how much of this applies to open weight models that are proliferating on Hugging Face? And as I think you and I agree on, turns out a lot. And so for over the last, for more than 2 years now, we have not only been researching this concept, but building tooling that, it's not just about the bill of materials is just a file format, right? It's not it's a means to an end, but we've been building tools that generate and enrich and scan AI bombs to help for use cases from rapidly accelerating how organizations assess risk in open weight models and public data sets, to how they track customized models that they're building and fine-tuning internally, to how they do continuous monitoring for AI incidents that are starting to happen and increasingly happening going forward. So it's a little bit about myself and the company, and for better or worse, we spend all day, every day thinking about supply chains and where software and AI came from and how do we trust it and where is it deployed. So excited to be here.
Mm. So let's actually talk about what prompted Manifest to actually sponsor the project. So that's the one part. And the second aspect, I think there is a confusion in terms of the AI, what AI bomb really is, right? Is it, if I trace it back to SBOM's side of thing, right? I think there are two schools of thought. One was the licensing and one was vulnerability side of thing, right? If you are using open source components, which one do you pivot towards, right? I think AI is slightly more complex. It's not just about the model that you're using. It's not about the weights. You're talking about data sets, how what kind of prompts are going into the system. From again, there might be like a bunch of people who are joining this particular LinkedIn live session. Some might be very, very technical. Some are like maybe just getting started. From your perspective, from your implementation, how would you define AI bomb for a layman, or also
Yeah,
from a technical resource?
absolutely. So let's start with the first question. So we here at Manifest are big believers in working with the community and also building towards community consensus. So part of why we're involved with this project, as well as other efforts, we've been involved with other OWASP Cycle and DX groups and SPDX, as we're working with some of the world's largest companies, but also policy-making bodies here in the US and abroad. We want to make sure that everybody is speaking the same language and using the same terms and the same concepts. And so we are big believers and supporters on groups that are trying to bring people together to have a common understanding and language and tooling around these important concepts. So a little brief around why we were excited to support and be involved in this group. So yeah, let's start with some AIBOM 101. So the first thing one has to say here is that you have to talk about the nomenclature. So amongst some of us in the community, there's some healthy and lighthearted debate around names, right? So whether you want to call it an AI bomb or bill of materials or an AIS bomb or an S bomb for AI, we're all essentially talking about the same thing, which is we think about what a traditional software bills of material is. An artifact that lists all of the components of a given piece of software. Traditionally, we think about open source libraries as one of the main targets, but it can include cryptographic assets or hardware or other sub apps. An AI bomb is taking that SBOM concept and extending it, or really just highlighting it to be able to describe not just models and data sets themselves, but entire AI-enabled systems. So, in bill of materials land, we often talk about, ingredients lists for software. So an AI bomb would describe all of the AI ingredients and the steps for how they got there for a piece of software. So let's make this a little bit more concrete. Let's talk about an AI-enabled medical device that's maybe good at diagnosing a radiology report or an X-ray. So obviously this device is going to have hardware that might show up in a hardware bill of materials. It might have some firmware and software and open source libraries, or maybe some internal libraries. All of that gets listed in the bill of materials with the traditional information around the identifiers and the suppliers and the licenses and other important metadata. But what's often missing, and why AI bomb is a really important concept, is what about the AI in the system? Right. And so I would expect to see what models are being used in this medical device, and not just the names of them, but where did they come from, right? If let's just say hypothetically it's a Medtronic system. Maybe they fine-tuned a model that's really, really good at analyzing X-rays and coming out with diagnoses. What I would want to understand from a risk perspective is, did you build this from scratch in-house? Is it based off of an open weight model? Maybe you took a more foundation or frontier model and then fine-tuned it with certain data sets, so it got very, very good at this particular use case. That's all the sort of information that I would want to see in an AI bomb, so that, again, AI bombs being a means to an end. What is that end? Risk reduction. I want to and trust. I want to understand, can I trust this medical device? Can I trust the AI in it and where it came from and who assembled it? And how do I maintain that inventory? So even if I trust it now, I can continue to trust it 6 months from now or a year from now.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect, right? If you just talk about AI governance, AI bomb itself, how you create that inventory, what you're using, is a big part of your governance itself, right? Like back in the days when I started in security, they used to say okay, you can only protect what you see. And it's very, very important in terms of the AI, because there are so many different pieces that are coming together. So again, I want to give a lot of time for you to talk about Manifest itself, right? So how does one really start? Let's say there is a customer or prospect itself for a Manifest, right? What is the step number one, right?
Absolutely. So I think there are several different groups in the enterprise that have slightly different questions around this. So let's first talk about AppSec or developers. So if you're just using Claude Code or a big, some sort of frontier model for your AI development, your security or your trust around it, ultimately, in terms of supply chain, ultimately comes down to like, how much do you trust Anthropic, right? You know, all of the prompts are going to Anthropic servers. How much do you trust their security, their retention, etc. And there's only so much you can do, because the average company isn't going to be able to make Anthropic change their ways or their processes, right? But for a lot of other organizations that are using open weight models or fine-tuning models, that's usually the place to start. So let's talk about the pain points a lot of organizations have. The first is, how do I assess trust in a model that I didn't build myself, right? And so we, like I said, work with Fortune 500 and companies and major enterprises around the world. Most of these organizations have some sort of AI review board, right? It has some group combination of security and compliance, maybe legal or engineering. And their job is to figure out, can we use this model or not? That process at some of the world's largest, most mature companies literally takes 6 to 8 weeks just to decide whether or not I can use this model or not. In that time, competitors are moving faster, new models are coming out. Like 2 months is a long time just to decide whether or not I can use a model. So that's pain point number one. And I can talk about where we fit in, how we get that down to a much shorter process and where AIBOMs fit in. The second is, all right, what models am I using, right? Model inventory is one of the most overlooked aspects. As you mentioned, Aruneesh, like you can't defend, you can't respond to what you don't know you have. And so to this day, there are very few CISOs that I chat with. And if I ask, hey, if you just learned that a specific model was compromised or a data set is some sort of issue with it, how quickly could you tell me your exposure? And usually it's, I have no idea. Phone calls, emails, spreadsheets, no centralized inventory, right? From there, you know, a lot of organizations are then doing fine tuning. So we work with a very large car company that many of us would, are familiar with, and I have one of their cars sitting in my driveway. They put AI in their cars. They fine tune the models. After the user in the organization wants to use an open weight model and trains it and tunes it with those external data sets, and then finally arrives at a highly tuned, customized, purpose-fit model, what happens to it? How do they understand the software supply chain or the AI supply chain? The fact that Daniel and this business unit started from this base model, fine-tuned it with these training data sets, quantized the model, made some other adaptations, et cetera, stored it here. That's often missing. Next is like, where is this thing in my environment, right? So even if people have good model inventories, they've got to be deployed somewhere, right? I'm putting this version of the model into this container, into this repository, and that thing ends up in a car, in a weapon system, in a banking application, right? Another great place for bills of material to tell that story. I took this model, trained it, I have this distilled model, and I put it in a container, putting this application. And then lastly, it's all about incident response, which is starting to happen more and more. Part of the foundation story for us here was the Lion 5B incident, maybe, was it 3 or 4 years ago now? Lion 5B, a 5 billion image data set, was used to train Stable Diffusion. Some Stanford researchers found a couple thousand images of CSAM, basically child pornography, in this data set. The owners of the data set and Stable Diffusion ripped it off of Hugging Face, and other organizations were left doing incident response. Where are we using this model, Stable Diffusion, in our enterprise? Have we trained anything off of this compromised data set? Because it may be fine for our business purposes, but it's basically having, you know, internalized child pornography in the models, which is obviously a problem. So there are major gaps and pain points that most organizations using AI have, which is often where our conversations start. And then the last one, just to be comprehensive about it, is one that a lot of people, I think, forget about, which is third-party AI risk. If I'm a hospital system buying this AI-enabled MRI machine, if I'm the Department of War buying this AI-enabled weapon system, how do I trust or know about the AI in this thing that my supplier is selling to me, right? Did they just throw DeepSeek under the hood? Did they roll their own? So putting it into procurement and TPRM's hands is really, really important as well. So that's kind of the list of starting points where these conversations begin, because again, very few people say, I have an AI bot problem. It's more of a, why does it take us 2 months to approve a brand new model? If an incident happens, I have no idea what models we're using and where. I have no idea where all these fine-tuned models came from and how we actually developed them. those are the real pain points enterprises have, that if you know how to generate, enrich, scan, operationalize AIBOMs, you can really make an impact on.
Yeah, and in fact, like you touched on a very good point, right? And I did it myself to 2021 when Log4j happened, right? And Log4j happened when the supply chain, the SBOM itself was a mature space itself, right? We used to talk about, okay, these are like the libraries that we are using, and we have like 20 years of experience doing that, right? And AI has just come on our face in the last 4 years itself, right? And companies are I would use the word struggling to figure out, okay, I'm using AI, but I do not really know how to actually control this one, right? Uh, One question that I would also ask is like, when you're speaking to CISOs, when you're speaking to AppSec teams, when you're speaking to legal compliance and other folks, right? Like, who's actually buying? Who's actually coming with the demand that I do need to actually do it, right? Because that's a question that is plaguing multiple organizations. Or who is the first person saying, okay, I need this?
Yep. In our experience, typically it's AppSec if they're using security internally. If they're using AI internally, they are the first and primary buyers. But we also see a lot of demand from third-party risk management shops. I need to de-risk the AI in my vendors, my third-party tech. And we also see legitimate purchasing from like GRC, governance, risk, and compliance teams, and or legal. There's a little bit of overlap there, right? Those are the organizations that are maybe at the core of this AI review board. Like, how do we approve these models? How do we automate compliance and approval? And then if we are subject to any customer requirements or government requirements or regulations, how do we answer the mail? A quick example on that, there's a Fortune 500 AI company that everybody has heard of that is using Cyclone DX AI bombs or AIS bombs ahead of the EU AI Act compliance. So they want to automatically generate these artifacts that when they need to demonstrate compliance with this pretty major regulation happening in the European Union, they have the artifacts there automatically, so it doesn't have to be a big, painful manual exercise to answer the mail on it.
Very interesting. So you're saying like when you're speaking to companies, it's usually the AppSec team or maybe the security teams, which are, let's say, like 60 to maybe 80% of the team, which are demanding the AI bomb itself, right? And then you also rightfully touched on the governance aspect, right? Everything that we are doing needs to comply with something, right? I'm getting it because I need to comply by EU AI Act or maybe something else. And do you see this is happening only in Europe, or do you see in other areas? And again, like we are covering this as part of the AIBOM project, there is a policy forum. From your awareness, are you selling only in Europe, or are you selling in other regions?
Yeah, all over. So we know in the US, there's let's touch on, there's two themes, right? The first theme is there's increasing AI specific guidance, regulation, legislation around the world. The second theme is where there's existing SBOM or software supply chain regulation, they are saying, hey, this also applies to AI. So let's talk about like an example of that latter one. In the US, the Food and Drug Administration, right? So the organization that's responsible for approving medical devices. They've had an SBOM and a pretty robust cybersecurity demand for requirements for many years. They are now recently saying, hey, all of the stuff we demand for your normal software libraries also applies for the AI you put in your medical device. So anyone, regardless where you are in the world, if you want to sell a medical device to Americans, you have to go through this process. And that means not just generating and sharing and enriching your SBOMs, but also the AI in those systems. And there's increasing amounts of that. But there's also a whole new raft of guidance globally all around AI bombs and AI supply chain security, from the US to anyone who wants to sell a car in the US to anyone selling to the US government. There's new proposed language around this. In Europe, you obviously have the EU AI Act. India has very strong SBOM supply chain security regulations that also are now pointing towards AI. Japan and Korea as well are leaning into this. We've seen language in policy circles in Australia as well. This is becoming a pretty global phenomenon. And even as the US has recently put out some executive orders that are a little bit weaker on the frontier models and the frontier model providers. Even China has very strong AI security regulation internally for AI developers inside of China. So this seems to be something that the world agrees on. We need to be able to understand the AI that our companies are building and buying. We need to make sure we understand where they came from, and that should be a gate for bringing them to market. So it's truly a global phenomenon.
Okay, let me pivot something that we touched upon earlier itself, right, around the AI inventory. So it's a two-folded question. How do you actually build that inventory? Is it, and what is the scope for that inventory? Like, is it for stuff that you're building with in-house, or you're also looking at what's coming from outside? And there is a specific side question for the second scenario when it's a third-party AI model itself, right?
Yep.
Why should they actually, a third party, give you their secret sauce of sorts, right? And again, there is a project or like maybe a sub initiative that I'm working on is like a AI inventory at a industry level, right? Not so much of within an organization, but how do you actually like operationalize this one, right? If there are like 1,000 vendors out there, everybody wants to actually share their AI bomb itself. First of all, how do you actually get that into your organization, and what kind of legal protections they need to have in place before they actually share?
Yep. So the new phrase, marketing phrase, or the new risk is shadow AI, right? What is all the AI in my enterprise that I don't know about? And going back to that theme, the security team can't secure what they don't know about. So there are a couple sources of this and a couple ways to detect it. The most common place that people look and where a lot of the AI security companies are focusing is at the network layer, right? You can tell regardless of your developers, they're calling out to various APIs. If this one's going out to api.openai.com, this one's going to api.anthropic.com. At the network layer, we can see what calls are being made, and we can detect what AI is where and who's using it. Very helpful, very important, but an incomplete picture. The second is there's a lot of tools and software that developers can just download on their computers. And I would expand this not just to the specific models, but the AI-enabled software. Like organizations can just download Cursor and Windsurf. Do they actually know what's inside Cursor and Windsurf? Do they ship with vulnerabilities? Spoiler alert, yes, some of them used to. And then you also have the models, and the models that go in code specifically. So how well can you detect if a developer is working in a Python project and just imports the Hugging Face library and then loads a model from Hugging Face and then builds the prompt into your core product that you're pushing out to your SaaS product or whatever it is? How do you know that? You need something in your CI/CD pipeline, scanning source code, doing policy enforcement. That's an area where we focus on tremendously. So it's not just what is being used at the network level, but also what's actually being downloaded and incorporated into your product, whether it's a binary, GGUF file, or whatever it might be. And then lastly, you hit on it already, is that third-party shadow AI, right? I need to know what models are being where. And if a model comes out as being compromised or problematic, just like with Log4j Shell, I need to understand what's my exposure on the stuff I've built and bought, right? And people often forget about the purchasing part of it. So then you ask, why should a vendor give you the secret sauce, right? And we hear this pushback a lot on traditional software libraries as well, right? And if you don't believe that sharing an SBOM is giving away secret sauce, you're just giving away a list of ingredients. You're not giving away source code or anything about how you tune the model or how it operates. But it's that same concept. It's all about trust, right? I need to be able to trust what you put in. You don't need to give me enough information to reverse engineer the model you created for your use case. But I need to know that, if I'm an operator in the US government and we can't use any Chinese models, I need to know that the thing you're selling me isn't based on DeepSeek or Qwen or GLM models, right? And so you need to demonstrate that and prove it to me. So it's just enough that I can establish trust. The expectation isn't that you need to give me enough to reverse engineer what you've done to create your highly customized fine-tuned model.
And just on that particular point for the AI bomb inventory, do you think there is a need for establishing an industry-wide AI bomb inventory where companies can actually publish their AI bomb, and consumers or the buyers can actually go and, oh, I'm looking for Manifest Cyber's solution itself. Let me go in. Oh, do I need like a NDA and like legal protections? Yes, it should be there in that particular inventory itself?
This is a spicy question. So this has been attempted before in the software realm, where people were trying to build industry-specific SBOM repositories so that you could save time getting each other's SBOMs. None of those efforts have really taken off over the last several years. And there's a number of different reasons why. The loudest that I can remember is around concerns around privacy and ownership and security, right? So we still see a lot of SBOMs that are shared between suppliers and consumers, locked down by some sort of NDA. Just because I get Microsoft Teams as SBOM for my organization doesn't mean that I can share it with everybody else that uses Microsoft Teams, for example. So the legal side is going to be the biggest hurdle to a sort of utopian centralized SBOM or AIBOM repository. That being said, there are other likely initiatives that organizations can do to share. I know in automotive, there have been some efforts that we're supporting the ASRG, the Automotive Security Research Group, where we bring in a bunch of automotive related SBOMs together that we glean from publicly available information, just help structure it and do vulnerability scanning and other risk scanning so that organizations can more easily understand risk in their open source public supply chains from an automotive perspective. So certainly possible. It has been attempted on the software side of the house. And I think that those efforts didn't go as far as some of us had hoped, or didn't get as far as some of us had hoped.
Interesting. I mean, so I'm actually building like a prototype for this particular effort, and most of the
sorry to rain on your parade, Aruneesh. I hope it works out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually share this offline with you, and again, for anybody who's on the call, if they're interested in collaborating with this particular effort or the effort for AIBOM standardization, definitely visit owaspAIBOM.org itself. Again, I want to actually give the floor to you, talk about Manifest. Where can people actually find information about Manifest Cyber, the capabilities that they have, and what's in the roadmap?
Absolutely. So if people want to find out more information beyond just what I'm saying today, just go to our website, manifestcyber.com. You can get a demo. You can reach out to us. We're more than happy to share with everybody what we're building, since we're very proud of it. So the core problem that we are after is understanding holistic product risk. So let's take the example of, again, an MRI machine or maybe a car. Let's just pick on Toyota for a sec, just arbitrarily. Like Toyota doesn't write all the software that goes into its car. In the same way that Medtronic doesn't write all the software that goes into its medical devices, right? There's proprietary software, but there's also open source software. There's third-party components they might bundle in, operating systems, firmware, other packages, binaries, etc., that get assembled all together into that top-level product, right? It's a combination of what we think of as first-party security, what you build, and third-party security, what's built outside of your enterprise, right? Manifest is all about what is the supply chain, what is the whole product risk of this thing that I'm building and selling? How do I know everything that's in it, where it came from? How do I make sure it's secure? So part of that is not just thinking about software, but software, cryptography, firmware, AI, and by the end of the year, we'll be including hardware in there as well. So you can really model what is the bill of materials of this plane, of this car, of this MRI machine, of this point of sale system. And working with, again, AppSec teams to how do you implement this in front of developers so it doesn't slow them down as they're writing code, as well as third-party risk teams for as we're buying something, even if it gets put into our product grade, or even if it's like a Cisco router or a switch that's just going on the enterprise IT side, Manifest is a central platform that manages all of that in one place. So that is the ultimate problem that we're after, right? We want to help organizations illuminate their software and technology supply chains by gating what comes in the door, understanding what they have at any given time, how it's assembled and where it's assembled. And then the last bit that people often forget is that continuous monitoring element. So if I ship my medical device, my car, my plane, my point of sale system now, and it's good, and then 9 months from now, there's another vulnerability, Team PCP has compromised Axios or Light LLM or whatever it is this week, how do I know where I'm affected? It's that answering that blast radius, that log4shell question, right? Where am I affected? And what's the fix, and who needs to fix it? Is it a developer team? Is it a vendor? That's what Manifest is all about. And so we work with large enterprises around the world, especially across government, defense, automotive, financial services, and healthcare. especially those in highly regulated industries. But even the ones that aren't highly regulated are starting to see that this is just a gap that they need to fill, especially on the AI side. This is one of the things that really lands us a lot of early conversations. Everyone knows that we're racing to adopt AI and incorporate it across our enterprises, and typically that's coming from the very top down. And CISOs are feeling this pain where they don't have the tooling or budgets to keep up with the adoption of AI in their enterprises. And so one phenomenon that's happening around the world, which is one of the things we're trying to help solve, is how do we help defenders and security teams catch up with that speed of how quickly AI is being adopted, right? When you have a bunch of your developers going out to Hugging Face and grabbing random models, or people trying to train on public data sets, when you have everyone, all of your third-party vendors are now trying to shove AI in it, whether they need it or not. Security teams need visibility, they need control, and they need automation, because without any of that, they're blind or they're too slow to catch up with real adoption and real risk.
Actually, there's one question I'm like tempted to ask, right? Again, AI has been changing every year. Like almost every quarter, there is a new model, like you have Mythos and Fable, all those things, right? If you had a crystal ball, right? And if you were to say, okay, what next year of AI would look like?
Yep.
And how does actually Manifest be ready for that kind of adoption?
I do have a strong take on this, and it also is friendly to the company. I think one thing we've seen from the last year or two is people are still just focused on using and adopting frontier models, right? Everyone's just using Cloud Code or Codex or Copilot, right? And how do we roll that out across the enterprise? But I think if there's something that has started to change in the last, say, 3 months, we think about Tesla running out of their 2026 token spend in 1 quarter that they had allocated for 4 quarters. We see CFOs from major companies saying, we are spending way too much money on tokens. We may as well have just kept our humans. And we see the US government just rip out Fable 5 on a Friday afternoon when organizations had started to adopt it. And so when using these frontier models, you're sending your source code and your prompts to a third party. You're putting a lot of trust into an external vendor. You're seeing that it's actually getting really costly. And we know that especially once OpenAI or Anthropic go public, they're going to need to, or Anthropic specifically, like they're losing money. They're going to need to recoup costs somehow, and the subsidized costs are going to be there forever. Things will get more expensive. So you don't have privacy, don't have the cost element, and you don't have control. The US government can just rip out a model on any day that might be running your entire dev shop. That's not going to last when it comes to enterprises that need to be production ready 24/7 by 365. So what I think what's going to happen in the next year or two, and what has always been the case, but is now accelerated, is that move to open weight and self-hosted models, or especially with the excitement around GLM 5.2 in the last few weeks, people are seeing the open weight models become just as powerful, if not more so, at a lot of tasks than your Opus 4.8, then Gemini, then the GPT models. And so from a privacy, cost, and control perspective, I predict organizations are going to accelerate the adoption of open weight models, which then raises that burden for, well, how do I trust and secure these externally tuned models, right? It's just like the open source software problem. How do I trust this random thing on GitHub applied to AI? And that's exactly where Manifest plays. And so I don't just predict this because it will be good for the company. I genuinely think this will be a trend globally. And one day people, using Hugging Face and fine-tuned or pre-tuned models from Hugging Face will be as widespread as we use open source software packages for pretty much everything we have in software around the world.
Agree. I mean, like this is great. I mean, like I know we went a little over time itself, and again, for folks who are watching, sorry for the initial 3-4 minutes where we had a technical difficulty. Again, like Daniel, actually, it was a real pleasure having you on the call and talking about the problem statement in the first one, and also talking about Manifest Cyber, how it's helping organization address this challenge, right? And before I wrap up itself, it reminds me, I was doing a workshop in Dublin 3 weeks ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, in IAPP conference, right? And it was very heartwarming to hear a panel of legal folks. Everybody was talking about AI bomb, and it was like, it was music to my ears itself. Technical folks always talk about this, but having like people outside of tech talking about the importance of this was so important, and it was.
Yes, we didn't have time to talk about the legal risks. We talk a lot about technical risks and vulnerabilities and supply chain, but the legal risk of provenance, the legal risk of license use, like there is a lot for legal teams to be interested in when it comes to using third-party models and data sets. So 100% I've seen the same and also very encouraged by it, though it's probably one of the rare times where people are excited that lawyers are getting involved, since typically the joke is the opposite.
Yeah, you give me an idea for doing another LinkedIn Live. I do have penetration into lawyers itself. I'll probably do like another of these sessions. I'll work with the content team in AIBOM itself and structure a three-way conversation on this. But
Always happy to come join.
again, thank you so much for your time itself, and thank you for the content team on AIBOM to actually put this event together. And until next time,